readers of the Charleston Gazette-Mail. We are meeting with Democratic candidates for House of Delegates in Districts 37 and 39. And the first thing we like to do is introduce ourselves to you. So I'm going to start down here on the very end and we'll go around the table.
I'm Brad McElhenney. I'm co-editor of the Gazette-Mail, and one of my jobs is working with the Daily Mail. Thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. I'm Kelly Mayer, Daily Mail opinion page editor.
I'm Whitney Burdett. I'm an editorial writer for the Daily Mail opinion page.
I'm Dan DeRocher. I'm a Kanawha County reporter.
Rob Byers, I'm the co-editor of the Gazette-Mail.
I'm Dawn Miller. I'm the Gazette opinion page editor.
I'm Greg Moore, the city editor of the Gazette.
Okay, thanks. So then what we like you to do is we ask you to introduce yourselves and just for a minute tell us why you're running, and then we'll do some questions. And I suppose we should distinguish. We've got Mike in the 37th and Wes in the 39th, and Clint, you are
39th.
39th. Okay, good. All right, so I'll start with you, Clint. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us why you're running. Just a minute, and we'll go down the table.
Okay, hi, my name is, I appreciate y'all inviting me here to this meeting. My name is Clint Casto. I'm running because I want to get involved in the process here in West Virginia and maybe be able to be a part of this great state and help change the course that the state has been going into.
My name is Wes Holden. I worked for 30 years for Senator Rockefeller, meeting the needs of the public, whether federal, state, or even outside of the federal government, and I feel I could do a better job than the current person who's in there, and that's why I'm running. I want to meet the needs of the state, of the people.
Hi, I'm Mike Pushkin. I'm currently serving as the delegate from the 37th district in the House of Delegates. That's the district that we are in now, in the East End and downtown, most of the west side of North Charleston. And I'm running for re-election. First, I feel it is an honor to be a representative of the people in this district, a lot of whom do not often have a real strong voice at the Capitol. I feel that I have done a good job of providing that voice at the Capitol. And my philosophy on being a representative is going out and going door to door, talking to the people, going to as many community events as possible, listening to the people that I'm supposed to be representing, and that is what influences me in decision making on bills that I've introduced, on things that I've fought hard for at the Capitol. I don't think that's the way laws are supposed to be made. We're supposed to be representing the people, getting the conscience of the people taken at the Capitol, as opposed to downloading it off of a model legislation website, which too often is the way that laws are made at our state capitol right.
Okay. So I've been asking everybody who wants to be in the legislature how they would solve the state budget problem. What combination of tax revenue increases, tax cuts, or whatever. So would Holden like to start with that? What would you like to see?
What would I like to see?
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen the legislature make that their top priority going into the session. A lot of us said that. We knew that we had these budget problems going into the session from day one. Actually, before day one, we should have been looking at. They cut back. They said they were saving the state money by cutting back on interim meetings. Those interim meetings could have been used to identify the waste in state government, identify places where there could be cuts, because there are going to have to be some cuts. But you can't do that in the last couple of days of session. Decide we're going to make cuts across the board. If we're going to make cuts, and I think people of the state expect us to cut back a little bit in a budget crisis, we have to spend a lot of time. I would have preferred to have met, during the interim meetings, and looked at every agency one by one, identified where we could make some cuts, where they're going to hurt the least, where they'd be most effective, and do that. Also, we're not going to cut our way out of this either. We are going to have to create some revenue. I'm open to looking at the $1 a pack tobacco tax. I believe that if it's at $1, that's going to get people to quit smoking, which is a win-win situation, because we have some of the highest rates of tobacco use in the country, and one of the lowest taxes. I think the only state bordering us that has lower taxes on tobacco is Virginia, and they're a tobacco producer. So I'd be willing to look at that. I would also, we hear a lot up there from Delegate Morgan from over in Huntington about the 1 cent sales tax. I think that I've changed my opinion on that. I do think that that's something that wouldn't hurt so bad, a 1 cent sales tax, and I think it would go a long way.
You mean on food or what's it?
No, not on food, a sales tax.
Sales tax increase then?
Yeah, small one, a 1 cent sales tax. I think that would be, it would be spread thin. It broadens the base, and I would support looking into that. But the important thing is, we all knew that there was a budget shortfall going into the session. This is stuff that we should have been talking about from day one, even in interims. We didn't. We wasted time talking about religious freedom bills, about concealed carry bills, raw milk bills. That's what we spent our time during the 60-day session on, instead of the budget shortfall that we all knew that we had.
Well, definitely we know Humpty Dumpty's fallen off the wall and he's broken and cannot be put back together again. What we've been experiencing in the legislature is good politics but poor fiscal policy. And with what Mike was talking about was increasing the sales tax by 1 cent. I don't know if West Virginians want another tax that way, but something that I think I would be open to is to increase the tax for, let's say, 3 years to try to amend some of the fiscal policy problems that we do have. And then after 3 years, go back and revisit that again if we need to ask for an extension of that tax, but it won't be a permanent tax. Let's see, and I agree with what Mike had to say about the legislature knew we were in a fiscal crunch, and then they dilly-dallied away the hours, and that was another reason why I wanted to run for office. We need to come together and revamp some of the programs and government that we do have. And there, we can maybe combine certain agencies so there wouldn't be so top-heavy, and take care of the public employees who are actually the ones needing and deserving a pay raise. Look how long they've gone without a pay raise. And a lot of people say, well, think, unless you've been a public employee and know how the system works, it's hard for people on the outside trying to live within their shoes and within their means of carrying out your job. You feel like you've been disrespected. When you're hired as a public employee, you know there's not a lot of actual benefits. And maybe something that the state could do is resolve some of the holiday situations, allow them to come in and work that we have too many state holidays, and let them come in and work then. Let's see, that's a big question about what would I do to fix it. I would agree with the tax on tobacco, but also, alcohol, soda, snacks. Why not tax those? Those are also a detriment to public health. And let's take a look at those and maybe stop some of the drunkenness and obesity problems that we have in the state. To me, it's just as bad as tobacco. So there's other sources out there if we want to go after these sacred cows and quit making them sacred cows.
Would you try and close the hole in the budget entirely by tax increases, or would you
well, I think there's some, unfortunately, as a candidate and not being in state government, I don't know all the ins and outs of the current budget and things that could be looked at. I hear politicians say that they've looked at various things that could be changed. So I think it would take a combination of that and plus increasing tax on some of these other issues. And maybe, again, as I indicated, put a time limit, not make it a permanent tax. Do it for a limited time, and then see if we can get out of this fiscal crunch by changing some of the policies that we have.
Mr. Casto, what would you do with the state budget?
Okay, well, what I'd do on the state budget is look at everything from top to bottom to see where we can streamline the any kind of agencies that we can, or any kind of where we can make some cuts that we can afford here in West Virginia. I'm always I agree that should be a priority, but if elected, I would try to look at the whole situation, see who the other people I'm dealing here with, and see what kind of concessions that the people in my district, if I did win, would be able to consider. So I guess you would have to look at everything top to bottom, see what you could do that makes some cuts where you wouldn't affect like education. I'm always hesitant to cut education. On legislating morality, I think that's kind of hard to do by putting the tax on the dollar on the cigarettes. Isn't going to really make a difference. People quitting smoking. People's got to make their own choices in life here. But I would support some kind of increase in taxes on tobacco use. I do think the tobacco is harmful to one's health. About the sodas, I'm not too sure if I'm up to increasing anything on food. There again, people in the state have to make their own decisions what they want to do to eat and put in their body. That has to come from a personal decision. I do think that I would support a tobacco tax. Not too sure if I would put any kind of taxes on food per se. And then look to see what I'm dealing here with the legislature. If I did get elected, I'd be a freshman coming in there. I little doubt I'd have a lot of power, but I would try to argue to see what I could do to represent the community that I live in and what I thought would be best. I do think this, the state with this budget crisis, it does everybody has everybody's mind playing. And when you talk about state employees, I think everybody right now is just happy. People I know are just happy to have a job right now. They're happy to have a job, any kind of job. But I would like to see the direction of the states go in a better direction. But I have to look at the overall situation, what I can do if I was elected in. But there are certain things I would support, such as the increase in tobacco, possibly alcohol. I'm not too sure what that number would be on the pack, because I'm not too sure, how much revenue I would bring in. I'm not ascertaining how many packs of cigarettes people smoke. But that's going to have to be a personal decision coming from people, and I don't know if a money thing's going to deter people, but I would like to see, more education, more people making their own decisions to say, hey, I got to have pride in myself in the state here and do what's right.
Yes, sir.
That's one more thing about the budget.
Sure.
It's fairly, the most important issue that we're facing right now. I'm waiting to hear the call from the governor to go back in and address it. One thing we're required to do by the state constitution is pass a budget, and we're getting too close to really a government shutdown here in West Virginia if we don't do something. And nobody wants higher taxes. I don't want higher taxes. None of my colleagues want higher taxes. But I can't see a realistic way to cut that much out of the state budget without it really hurting. Nobody wants to. People want roads to drive on. That's important for it damages people's cars when they hit potholes. It's important to bring business in. We have to have roads for people to drive on. We have to have strong public schools. Nobody wants to shut schools down. People don't want to. We've already got the lowest paid teachers in the country. We can't afford to pay them any less. We have to fix the PEIA problem. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to shut down state police. These are essential government functions that we need. So nobody wants to see higher taxes. But I think if people know that 1 cent sales tax or that tobacco tax is going to fix and fund PEIA, if they know that money is going to fix the roads, I think people would accept that. And it's something that it has to be done because like I said, we can't cut our way to fix this budget problem. It's too big of a hole to cut.
Well, as long as we're on the subject, let me run this by. Larry Rowe was in here the other day, and he said, begrudgingly, reluctantly, maybe consider a food tax, and the way he would keep it from harming the poorest working poor people, he said, would be to also do an earned income tax credit, so that the lowest income working people would get some sort of tax refund that would make up for it.
Well, I don't see how that could work. You go bring in your sales receipts. Who's to know whether those are yours? And I think that would be a nightmare. And unfortunately, the poorest probably don't pay or even have anything to file for a state income tax. So I don't think that would be viable one bit.
There was no discussion
Yeah.
about sales receipts. Okay, go ahead.
I would support an earned income tax credit. Sure. I mean that helps the working people.
Right, for food.
It helps working people, and I think it's something the state definitely needs to look at. I'm of the mindset that you put a little bit more spending money in the hands of working people, and they spend it. They have to, and that's good for the economy to increase the sales taxes. So yeah, I would support an earned income tax credit. I'm very reluctant to support a food tax, though. Everybody has to eat, and I think it is a regressive tax, and it affects working people more than it affects the wealthier people. They have to spend a larger percentage of their income on food. So I'd be very reluctant to go back to a food tax.
And I assume, Wes, you like earned
Well, I
income
mean,
tax
I'm
credit?
agreeing with what he's saying, but, I believe in trickle-down economics, and you might wonder as a Democrat, why am I saying that? But trickle-down economics to me is prevailing wage, where people make a decent wage, and because they have a decent wage, they have more money to spend. By having more money to spend, then they can support other small businesses or whatever that keeps our economy thriving. And if we want to do away with prevailing wage, then that means people are going to have less money. Then we're going to be stuck in a deeper hole next year than what we are in now.
Okay, well, we can come back to that. Mr. Casto, any thoughts on either earned income tax credit, yes or no?
Well, that would be depending if there was actually an increase in the food tax itself. Is that what we're referring to? Well, hopefully they don't raise any more taxes on the food, so I wouldn't support any kind of food increase.
Okay.
But I guess in a certain here, what would be the aspect of what they would consider the working poor for it to be done earned credit? So I'd have to look at the specs to see what the specs of the bill would be, or what the situation would be in general. But hopefully we don't have to go down that road where we have to increase the food tax again, like they did in the 80s, where they had the soft drink tax and they had the 1 cent tax and all that kind of deal. But and like I said, it all depends here too. Is becoming as a freshman, I would have to see what other kind of situation I'm working with, and what I would support, because I guess I would be willing to compromise, if necessary. But from there, I'm not too sure what your definitions of working poor or what the situations would be.
Okay. And since prevailing wage came up, should we just get everybody on the record? What
I
you
have a
think?
record on
Yes.
I voted
Okay,
against.
well, I'm for prevailing wage.
Right.
It only makes sense. And a lot of things with prevailing wage, we have to remember, this is from the Davis-Bacon Act from a long time ago, and that was to protect local working people instead of out-of-state people coming in, taking away jobs, taking away incomes, that as soon as they come in my area, there's a specific business that was built. And then since then, I've talked to other people. We have out-of-state workers coming in, building these little businesses, and then leaving. To me, West Virginians deserve West Virginia jobs, not out-of-state people coming in, taking away our jobs, and doing away with right to work and prevailing wage. Who's going to suffer? It's going to be our people, and we have to stand up for our people.
Anything you want to say?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I voted against the repeal of prevailing wage. I also voted against the right to work law. I don't think that our problems in the state is that working people are making too much money.
Exactly.
I don't see that as something that's going to necessarily bring more industry into the state. I think what's going to bring industry into the state is having a well-trained, educated workforce that's drug-free.
Exactly.
And roads to drive on.
And then unions, their people are drug-free because they test them.
And they're also taxpayers.
Exactly.
Well, Mr. Casto, would
No,
you
yes.
also bring back prevailing wage?
Yes, I believe that bring back prevailing wage, and would be a good thing for the state. I look at other states that I think there was a lot of frustration that people think that repealing the prevailing wage and making this a right to work state was going to change the whole economic climate here. I mean, Ohio seems to be doing pretty good. They don't have any right to work state. California seems like they have a lot of jobs going on. There's New York, same thing here. You look at places like that are right to work, like North Carolina. Even they might have had some short-term gains, but look where the textile industry and the manufacturing jobs have gone there. Go try to find a textile place in North Carolina. My friend used to work at American or U.S. Leathers, and they shut down and gone. in the area. You know, they had other countries come in, look at the factory. So I don't really think that's the reason why most of the manufacturing jobs have been shipped out of the country or shipped to other states. In that kind of area, I think a good, like, both, you know, I think everybody agrees, a good educated workforce and an educated population is a good start. I don't think cutting the wage, I don't agree and trickle down. Personally, I want more than a trickle, but that's just me personally. When you use trickle down economics, I don't think that's what that's used in a term, and I think really right to work is a misnomer, because is it really going to change the economic viability of the state by going to the right to work? I think overall there's some greater forces at play than the unions. You know, my grandmother, her dad, worked coal mines, and he talks about meeting the union guy at the time and signed up for the union, and how safety standards increased and his pay went up to $3 a day. So I mean, it's people forgot that people fought to get the unions here, because basically here there was a lot of low wages and bad work conditions, and that's what people fought for. And that just got turned around because, I think there's a frustration. People think that's going to change the economics, or there's going to be an influx of construction and manufacturing jobs now because you don't have to deal with a good wage.
Delegate Pushkin, I'd like
Pointing at me.
I would start with you, but actually, start with you.
Okay.
First term legislator running for re-election.
Yes.
You self-admitted non-traditional candidate 2 years ago.
I still think I'm a non-traditional.
I think so too. And effective, very effective first term legislator, I would say.
Thank you, I appreciate
But what did you learn as a first term legislator probably that you didn't expect? And then what advice would you give to either of these gentlemen?
As someone who has been a follower of politics, obviously I'm running for office, I'm interested in politics, someone who's been paying attention to the legislature for a very long time, what I didn't expect was to be how I get along with people who I kind of have rooted against for most of my adult life. There's a lot of people, like for example, the gentleman who these guys are vying to run against. I get along with them on a personal level. I'm able to work across the aisle on a lot of issues. That was surprising. People who I've been reading the paper and following for a long time and have disagreed with their policies for a long time. I actually get along quite well with them and have been able to work with them on a whole lot of issues that you don't hear about. And what was the second question?
Just what advice would you give to either one of these gentlemen if they get elected for this first termers?
I guess keep an open mind. Find the places where you can agree. Try to be empathetic. I think that's something that's being lost, especially in Washington, D.C. right now, it seems like, and it's starting to trickle down to the state level too, is you got to be able to see the other person's side. If you're going to make be able to make compromise and then be able to create a legislation for everybody, you got to be able to see the other person's side. I can tell you there's just one issue where I have a very hard time seeing the other side, and that's when it comes to civil rights. I think if you look at history, in my opinion, there is a right and a wrong side to the civil rights issue. And that's why I got very upset when we spent, in my opinion, wasted so much time on trying to rewrite the First Amendment, which we already have a very good First Amendment in this country. We have even stronger religious freedoms in our state constitution. That's one area where I don't see a compromise. I cannot compromise somebody's civil rights.
I would also consider myself a non-traditional candidate. The difference, you have to remember, with the exception of downtown Charleston, the rest of the districts, they're in rural areas. Our views of being a Democrat is a little bit different than the views of more, I'm not talking against you, but it's downtown Charleston is more liberal. And what it would take for a downtown Charleston Democrat to get elected in the rural part of the county, they would not be elected. I'm very conservative. I again believe in religious freedom. One of the things I would like to put into effect, many of the practices that I learned working for Senator Rockefeller, and that is out meeting the people. And one of the things I used to do for Senator Rockefeller, I used to conduct mobile office visits. And I would go to different places through the different counties and meet with people. And I would like to bring constituent services back to public service with many members of the legislature, because our opponent, you never do see him. And when I've been out campaigning, they told me they've never met my opponent. And they only seen him one time, and that was riding on a float in a parade for the high school. And I would like to, I have mostly 3 different areas that I would like to concentrate on within my district. And once a month, be in each one of those districts, either at a post office, a school, or a library, to say, West Holden will be here. Come talk to him about problems that you're having with state government. Now, I couldn't do that during the legislative session. And where also during my time with Senator Rockefeller, people would call having certain needs that need to be met, either within state or federal government. And I probably did as many state issues as I did federal government issues. And you wouldn't believe it, but some legislators would use me as like I was their assistant to work out some of their problems. And so that way I feel like the public needs to be in close contact with their representative.
Well, you said you believed in religious freedom, which
Yes.
I hope we all do.
Right.
Does that mean you would have voted for that law?
No, I would vote against that because it's not really religious freedom. If you, let's say you have someone with religious, trying to promote, I guess what I'm trying to say, what specific religion are you going to promote? You know, in Christianity, there's umpteen forms of different denominations and different ways of looking at things. And I think if we just follow the example of Jesus, he did not condemn anybody. The only people he condemned were the religious bigots. And I think we just need to make sure that we don't fall into religious bigotry, and we need to be more like Jesus, who, as being a Christian, is who we're supposed to be like.
Talk about the RIFRA bill.
Oh, well, going back to, I guess I'll answer the whole thing about being in the community. I guess I do see everybody on a daily basis because I drive through there. You know, I know a lot of people out that way. So a lot of activities I do out in the area I live in on my road. You know, get to living out my road on Tuppers Creek, you get to know everybody. It's everybody likes to stop by your house or see what you're into or wave at you. Or I go to the post office there or go through the Go Mart or whatever. So I got my phone number, so if anybody hears me, I don't have to be a specific place. Day and age, you can just hit me up on the Facebook or call my cell phone. My number is on there. But going back to the religious freedom bill, we take an oath if you do get elected to uphold the Constitution, and I would not violate anything that violates the Constitution. I'd have to look at the whole bill in entirety. I was involved in the process in that type of situation. But other than that, I look at everything in entirety, but I would make sure I wouldn't vote on something that wouldn't violate the Constitution. I took an oath on it. But yes, in that type of manner.
So the religious freedom, the
Well-
bill that was there, you don't know how you'd vote on that.
Well, I didn't read the whole bill, but I'm not going to have any, discriminate or everybody. Like I said here, everybody should be able to tolerate other people. People aren't bothering everybody. I think you have a constitutional right to practice your religion, and in the notion here, we already have a constitution that gives us religious freedoms. I would not mess with religious freedoms in this state or in this country. Like I said, I take an oath to the Constitution. So if it violates the Constitution, I'm not going to vote for the bill.
Say one more thing about that. Of course, everybody's for religious freedom. You know, everybody's for religious freedom. I mean, and when I said this when I spoke about it on the House floor, I'm Jewish. My family moved, left Eastern Europe, wound up in West Virginia over 100 years ago because of religious freedom. They were escaping real persecution in Eastern Europe, and they found religious freedom in the United States, in West Virginia. They found a very welcoming community here in Charleston, West Virginia, and it's not something that I think we need because we don't have religious persecution in the United States of America. As a third generation, Jew in Charleston, West Virginia, I do not know what religious persecution is because it doesn't happen here. We're very accepting people, and it's not something that's necessary. And right now we can see where that bill was passed in North Carolina this past session and in Mississippi. You can only just look at the economic effects that it has had on those states. And I read one of the earlier articles about one of my colleagues from Putnam County. I would welcome PayPal and their 400 jobs and their $3.8 million project for this district right here. I would love to have them on the west side or the east end of Charleston.
Mr. Pushkin,
And I'd like to have Bruce Springsteen play here.
I'd like to move it.
Okay, I just wanted to tell you.
I know you're not privy to the House leadership discussions really, but would you expect that bill to come up again next year, do you think?
Well, I'm hoping we have different leadership next year. That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, I mean, I think that was, what concerned me is that appeared to be the priority of House leadership. Not fixing the budget, not fixing and funding PEIA, not fixing a single pothole out here, but passing a bill that we don't need to protect a constitutional right that we've always had. The speaker came down off the podium to defend the bill when it was on second reading. I haven't been there that long, but I don't think that's a common practice. So yeah, I would say that if the leadership stays the same, that we will see that bill again next year, despite the proof that what it's done in North Carolina and Mississippi, where you had an economic boycott of that state. And you heard it here from another delegate from Putnam County that they're interested in running that bill again, despite knowing what it has done, that it's caused an economic boycott in North Carolina. So I would hope that they learn from that they learn from our mistakes and other states' mistakes and not run it again. I would hope we go up there and work on bipartisan legislation for the good of all of West Virginia and not our own personal agenda.
Yeah, I was going to change something, but I will point out, it was not, none of those candidates in Putnam County brought the religious freedom bill up. It was brought up by.
Right.
Well, that's what you guys should do.
Yeah, it's your job.
But no one was pushing it. It was late meeting.
Well,
but that's another what we'll ask about. And
look who introduced it.
Mr.
That's who brought it up.
Casto mentioned earlier, you can't legislate morality. You can't legislate people's attitudes either.
That's right.
The thing I've been getting on, let's go back to economics.
Okay.
We always talk about, and we're all in favor of bringing jobs to the state and bringing good corporations, be it PayPal or whoever, to the state that's going to bring more jobs. But what can we do, whether it's a legislative fix or a cultural fix or what, to let's get a better attitude of creating jobs that we can create our own jobs instead of waiting for someone else or waiting for some companies. I guess we'll start with you, Mr. Holden. Just
no, I agree. And one of the problems, we hear do away with or institute right to work and do away with prevailing wage, but again, it goes back to having a qualified, educated workforce, number one, and also our other problem is flat land. Out in Sissonville, I was aware of a company that might be interested in moving out there, but they need flat land. And so one of the things I would like to see, if there's some way, governments sometimes have to give businesses a nudge. And I'm thinking of, especially the coal fields down south, that if they have strip mines, abandoned mountaintop removal sites, why can't we give a nudge to some of these coal companies to allow them to put in infrastructure And then we could move people up out of the floodplain. We could locate businesses there. And then if we have proper broadband and internet, you know, I watch on TV about some of the rural farm states out in Nebraska and Iowa. They're doing marvelous things with internet and creating their own business. Why, and if they're doing it, then the obvious question is, why can't we do it? It shows it's not impossible. And one of the other things that I think that we could do to create like a small business, like the Veterans to Farming program, and what really can grow in that soil on mountaintop removal sites or strip mines? Briars and weeds. What's the best briars is blackberries and raspberries. Why not work out with some sort of food co-op where you could plant blackberries and raspberries and come and harvest them, and then eventually it could become a staple food crop for an income. You know, you go to Kroger's or Walmart, you see plenty of berries. Why can't we do that here? It doesn't take a genius to pick blackberries. When I was a kid, and I'm sure like you guys, we'd try to find the best blackberry batches. Well, why not make that into some sort of commercialized farming? It's just, you may grin about that, but it's just a way if we could make that one of our food crops. There's a lot of things that we could be doing to create small businesses. So, and then again, we have to make use of the flat land that we have, and we have to put in the proper infrastructure.
Oh, okay. And can you go from the question again from the top?
What can we do to create a culture of entrepreneurship in the state so that people, instead of thinking, oh, I can't get a job, they think, what skills do I have, and create their own job? Oh,
okay, yes. I think that's coming down to point of necessity, but where if it comes to that point that if people don't can go out there and find the job, it comes to necessity, the fact that they'll start coming up with innovative ways to make money. But education, having a good structure, having a good tax structure where some of these businesses can survive is also a necessity. Sometimes there's always some kind of short-term loss for a long-term gain, but it's going to take the innovators. But I think a lot of times you have to have a good foundation, an educated workforce. Everybody talks about the broadband, bring up the broadband standard to what, because it does seem like that coming the wave of the future is the people are up on their own websites and doing e-commerce, and I'd hate to see the state fall behind. And even where I live, they just now put out internet. Before I would just go to the library. I used a lot of the public services, such as the library, or I would go to the Panera Bread or McDonald's and just park in, take my laptop in. But I think it is good to have a good foundation. But education is a key. To come together, and where people can realize niche markets or just have a drive to work. Just the individuals, you have to have a drive, but I think a good foundation's in place. But I do like about the blackberries. I do know people, like I go to the farmers market here and there, and I do see people selling the blackberries, or I know people go out there and actually found the wild blackberries. But I don't think we should limit ourselves just because of flat land. I think we have to deal with the hand we're dealt with, and deal with what we do have. We can't let that be a hindrance. I mean, you look at other places where they have hills. They have other places I've seen. They've had expensive houses in the hills. They pay big money to live in hills like this, over here like we have here. And I think that's what makes, what we focus on is the mountains. I think that's what makes, West Virginia what it is, because in a way the mountains have, isolated us from other groups and kind of made a little bit of the culture here. I think we just got to take what we have here and make something with it.
I've always been a big proponent of, creating a quality of life and preserving a quality of life here in this valley and in this state that's going to attract people and keep our best and brightest, and make people can run businesses from anywhere these days. And it's not going to be one industry that saves us. It's going to be many industries that save us. And the biggest employer now is small business. I think that we the past decade or so, I think we've made a few mistakes, and that's why we're in the mess that we're in right now, by lowering corporate net income tax and eliminating franchise tax. That was done to create jobs. That was done to attract businesses to this state. And as we can see right now, it hasn't worked. And now we have a budget shortfall about the same size as what we cut out of it in those taxes. However, I do think that we could really look at our tax, and this is going to sound odd for a progressive Democrat to say, but we do need to look at our tax structure in this state. I don't think it's often fair to the small startups. I don't think it's fair to the small business. I think when we eliminated those taxes, it would really benefit it with some of the larger corporations and the out-of-state corporations. But I think we need to make look at our tax structure, make it more fair for the smaller startups, because that's what's going to pull us out of this. It's going to be like younger, creative people staying in this state, coming back into this state to create many businesses. Any number of things. You can do anything from anywhere in this day and age. We do need to, make sure they have the broadband access here. But we also got to pay for good roads, and we cannot continue to cut education. If you look at a state like North Carolina, where any success that they have in that state right now, I don't believe it's because of right to work, and it's definitely not because of a religious freedom bill. They had a couple of governors in a row that had the forward thinking to put money into higher education. They have the research trying. Education is going to be is what grows the economy. First of all, you have to have a trained, educated workforce, and you have to have good public schools for people to send their kids to, or they're not going to want to live here.
May I make an addition? When I worked for Senator Rockefeller 10 years ago, the federal government, especially the State Department, changed their procedures for passports. Like before, you did not need a passport to go to Mexico or come back from Mexico or come back from Canada. And so the congressional offices were being overwhelmed. Sometimes it would take people 6 months to get a passport. So one day I decided I would call the Secretary of State that handles passports, ended up speaking to a deputy secretary. And I said, I told her about the problem that I saw. And she said, yes, we are having a problem. I said, well, why don't you come to West Virginia? She said, we would be interested in coming to West Virginia. Could you send us a list of 10 sites that met these, guidelines that they were looking for? So I got in touch with the state, the Economic Development Office, and they gave me the information. I sent it to her. I waited 2 months, and after 2 months I hadn't heard, so I called her, and she said, unfortunately, what we did, we polled our people to ask them where they wanted to go, either to West Virginia or Arkansas. And unfortunately, because of the perception of the state, they went with Arkansas, Little Rock. And I'm thinking, it's like you're like me, we're better than they are. But it was the perception that people had. Well, I don't care. I'm a West Virginian. And so, but that taught me something there. Something we have to do is change perception and promote the state. And a lot of times I dealt with businesses trying to get visas, let's say specialty visas. And one of the things that people look for is what kind of downtown entertainment, what kind of colleges, what kind of schools do you have? And if you don't have those things, people are not interested in wanting to relocate here. So we need to also think about those things in order to entice and to save the best and the brightest that we have.
That's exactly right. I hope I've done my part to improve some of the downtown entertainment. But it's true though. People want to go to some place where they have something to do. Right. And we also, and you're right, Clint, that we do have to play the hands that we were dealt. And we were dealt, I think, a pretty good hand. We have a beautiful state. We could do so much in the ways of tourism, and just to attract people here. I mean, I need to echo a gentleman who's running for governor right now, but he's right. We have 4 beautiful seasons here. We're close to most of the East Coast. We have a lot of things going for us, and it's just going to take some forward thinking and not just cutting. We can't cut our way to prosperity.
That's right.
And we're going to have to put something into it to get people here. And I think it will work, and I'm optimistic.
Well, since you all brought up broadband, I would be interested would like the state to pursue getting broadband we need. Whether you like the Chris Walter's middle mile plan or whether you like something else. Who wants to go first?
I never had a chance to vote up or down on it.
Yeah, okay.
I try to read everything that's going up in front of a committee that I'm going to be on or something that's going on the floor. But, you know, it didn't make it that far in the House. I'm willing to look at it. I'm willing to work with Chris Walters if he's reelected. It's something that we need to. I mean, if we're going to attract businesses here, it's something that we're going to definitely need to invest in. A little bit leery of it being a state-run broadband.
Exactly.
A little bit leery of that. I know that there have been some mistakes as far as in technology fields that the state has made in the past and cost taxpayers a whole lot of money. So it's something we need to get back to work on next session if I'm there.
Well, I agree, and if you remember, Senator Rockefeller, being chairman of the Commerce Committee, brought a lot of money for broadband, and unfortunately, some things happened that was out of his control. But I remember when we had floods down in southern West Virginia, I would go there to represent the senator and see what the needs were. And sometimes their towers didn't work. And the senator would call back, and the senator had to put pressure on some of these companies so that emergency services could be provided because no one knew what was going on down there. So again, as I was talking about economic development, we have to have broadband. I don't necessarily want to see one corporation come in and get wealthy off of it and impose whatever fees or restrictions that they may have. But it needs to be a joint venture between the state and corporations that deal with communications. There's a lot of things that we could do. You know, telecommunications for medicine. There's just so much. I remember when Senator Rockefeller, when he was in office, we had different police frequencies, and he tried to coordinate all those so we had the same frequencies. So there's a lot of things, but again, I'm not in state government, and I don't know what governmental leaders may or may not have done, but call businesses in because they're usually the best and the brightest, and they know more about how to solve their problems. And if we work with those businesses, then we could hopefully reach a good solution to meet the needs of the future for our West Virginians.
I'm familiar with his plan. Can you give me just a little bit of brief synopsis of what he was trying to say?
He had a bill that would enable the state to get investment to build a middle mile network, which then people could come in and connect to and provide high-speed internet out in areas that don't have it.
So would this be like a fiber line and then it would connect the DSL or cable?
Whatever is.
So
making it out
it's
of.
a fiber line that would allow for different companies to get on it and provide service. So you wouldn't just have one company that was able to access this rural area. You now have more companies that would be able to access.
And he stressed that it wouldn't be paid for out of general revenue, but they would go to New York and get investors, and the investors would only invest in it if they thought it was a plan that would pay off.
So why did they need to build to get the investors? Wouldn't the investors, couldn't they just do it on their own if they thought they were going to make money off of it?
Probably because the state was backing it, right? Sort of like guaranteeing it.
Yeah.
But this raises another question, and the subject is, would you like to see the state? But there's already a middle mile network, Frontier says. People say, oh, it's too expensive, or they don't want to use it. So another question in this topic is, would you like to see the state focus on establishing another middle mile network, or would you like to see the state focus on connecting to the existing one and hooking up more communities?
So there's already a fiber laid, but they're saying that the Frontier people want too much money to access.
Some
that
businesses
fiber.
say that, but yeah, it's too
Okay.
costly and they don't want to work with it.
So we would try to get a competing fiber line to go through. That would. How are they able to get the cost down lower?
Okay, well actually what I'm trying to do is get
Yeah.
you to tell me if you have any opinions on the best way for West Virginia to proceed in getting broadband to the rest of the residents. So do you have any thoughts about how you'd like it to
Well,
go?
if usually if there's a demand, just like on the road I was in, people called in all the time. It's like, hey, when are you getting when's the DSL coming, or where's the cable coming, or this and that. If there's demand, just like I guess what they're saying here, they've got investors are going. There's going to be people use it. People know how to use it. People are going to build it. I don't know if if the fact here that we should have, if we should be raising money with New York investors, that why did they need the West Virginia backing if it's profitable? I mean, I'm just a little confused in the situation. And if we already have a fiber laid, why isn't it being used? Is it just sitting there? I mean.
Okay. Alrighty. What else? Anything else down there?
And I think and another thing here, I have read that the standard of what we say is high speed has changed. Where I think we need to get up to speed if we do get people internet, that at the speed that the federal government sets in place. This is what the speed should be to consider high speed internet. I saw that we've had bills before where it'd be like 250 kilobytes when it's like the Obama's through the SEC it's 25, like 100 times faster than that. So I think we have to get up to speed what's going on technological wise, and a lot of that's through education. And I do agree with them because they were talking earlier about the arts and things to do. You are right, because I work at a company that deals in the entertainment, live entertainment industry, and people do look at entertainment, theater, music, things to do as to attract other people. But West Virginia could be at that level, but also I think West Virginia has a lot to offer. I mean, anybody been to the Mystery Hall? Anybody? Hawks Nest, Cranberry Glaze. I mean, there's a lot of.
What was the state budget?
I'd like to clap on that.
I've told people.
I
I have told people that on the phone about the state what they go see, and they've looked at that and like, yeah, that looks pretty cool. Or go to Blackwater Falls, or Cranberry Glaze, or any of the things that we do have to offer. I think a lot of people just don't realize what West Virginia. There's a lot of history here in the state, and people don't realize that. Yeah.
Daniel, is there anything you need?
Just a silly question for the elections page of how old each of you are.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Am I the oldest? I've never thought I was a senior. I'm just middle-aged.
Yeah, no, that's
46.
62.
37.
Anything else? You good?
We have not yet had a photographer show up.
Oh.
So if you guys could just hang out for a few minutes after, I think we're done with our conversation, but
Yeah.
I believe the photographer is on the way.